Hi, everybody. I'm Tiffany Bradley, and this is Art Off Pause. Today's Tuesday, in case you don't know what day it is, because every day is the same nowadays. And we're here with Ezeluomba from the New Orleans Museum of Art in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm really privileged to have him because he comes not to us just from New Orleans, but also from Nigeria, and really has a unique perspective on African art and American art based on his training. So I will give a short bio. I'll read a little bit from an art catalog, and then we'll get going. So Ndubuisi C. Ezeluomba is the Françoise Richardson Curator of African Art at the New Orleans Museum of Art, and he started in 2018. He received a Ph.D. in art history from the University of Florida, Gainesville, specializing in historic African shrines. Ezeluomba received his BA in Fine and Applied Arts from the University of Benin and graduated from the University of Ibadan in Nigeria, where his master's thesis focused on contemporary Nigerian artist, I'll try, Obi Ekwenchi. Ezeluomba has contributed to multiple publications and journals, including Routledge Encyclopedia of African Studies, Agents of Space, 18th Century Art, Architecture and Visual Culture, Routledge Encyclopedia of Modernism, and Black Art Quarterly. He has also presented at numerous international conferences. And being a Nigerian who is privileged to have studied extensely in Nigerian art, which not all people of color are able to really dig into both the historical and contemporary traditions of their art. I wanted to read a little bit about Royal Benin art using a catalog from the Smithsonian that was published in 1987. And this is just a little background on how some of the great pieces in our collections in the western part of our world got here. So this is talking about some British collections, and it says, the 1897 massacre and subsequent punitive expedition generated a great deal of public interest in Benin. A number of sensationalistic newspaper stories referred to Benin as the City of Blood. Some involved in the expedition published books, including a relatively straightforward account by Reginald Bacon, the expedition's intelligence officer. In these early accounts, the art objects, if mentioned favorably, are often considered to have been of non-Benin origin or influence, for example, attributing them to Egypt or Portugal. Many of the military men brought home objects as mementos and sometimes sold them cheaply. One of the objects in this collection, a royal head, is illustrated in Webster's August 1899 sales catalog with a price of only £30. Even allowing for change in the value of the pound and for the growth of the international art market, this price seems unbelievably low. So that whole paragraph is just super crazy to me, but it's also the world we live in and the world we're trying to move forward from. So with that, I will hand it to you, Andy, and you can talk about some of your scholarship and particularly Ancestors in Stone, which is the show that we would be seeing if your museum were open.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I like that very short clip from Brian Affair in that catalog. Actually, it will interest you to know that fairly recently, an auction was orchestrated on a Benin plaque out in the New York area. The plaque was already in the $1.2 million range before information got to the auction site that they should stop the sale, because that is that kind of fit within that rubric of objects that were removed from Benin during 1897. So, but you know what the auctioneer was looking to make from that sale was $1.25 million. So time has truly moved on. You know, we have a lot of appreciation as kind of, you know, being around the work, those works that were removed from Nigeria, and quite a lot of others, not necessarily from Nigeria. I think from many African countries south of the Sahara, especially Mali, Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Benin Republic, which actually had a large short that went to the French collection, and so forth and so on. It was a dark phase in our history, but you know, it has happened, and then hard as it may seem for you to, you know, heal or move away from that thing, it keeps coming back. But you know, we have gotten to the point where, you know, serious negotiations is on the way now to, you know, outrightly return those objects, because they were not given us, you know, as gift. They were removed by force, you know.
Along with some people who were removed by force, but that's a further discussion. But
yeah. So, well, we may have the opportunity to, you know, speak a little bit on that aspect of our work, but I think we have to kind of go back to the whole idea of ancestors in stone. Before I came to the New Orleans Museum of Art, I was working at the Virginia Museum of Fine Art as a research specialist in African art, working in a project that was funded by the Andrew Mellon Foundation to, you know, do research, scientific research and the curatorial research on their African art collection. So the title of what we were working on then was called Probing Beneath the Surface of African Art. And then in the process, I had identified an Conchi stone sculpture that we were working very hard to convince the museum to acquire, because Conchi, even though in the ICOM list of objects has been red flagged, any object that has been red flagged is object that should not be collected.
Mm. Can you talk more about the red flag and why certain objects shouldn't be collected?
Yeah, I think it was an agreement reached by, you know, UNESCO and you know, many countries, you know, regarding cultural heritages, and you know, there are obviously countries that has this very wonderful cultural heritage that, you know, could be archaeological materials that were being pilfered and you know, sold in the you know, in the black market, basically. So you know, for instance, in Mali, there is a part of Mali called Djenné. Djenné had this very extensive or expansive site where they you know, they excavate a lot of terracottas from the ground. And every time they excavate this, some people are now beginning to use that as a, you know, kind of market, where they excavate these things and bring them to the black market. Mm-hmm. And the European art dealers, they always buy them and, you know, kind of sell them. So eventually nations started signing up to you know, UNESCO treaty on this, on being able to, you know, preserve this cultural heritage, this cultural material. And whenever any nation signed up to UNESCO, UNESCO now protects them. So, you know, any institution that buys the object that come out from that place, they will be sanctioned to, you know, return them back. So you know, there are endless number of, you know, archaeological material that has been put in that, you know, list. So you know, the institution of museums, they have an overarching body, which is the ICOM. So, you know, this is like a watchdog that you know, kind of watch what museum bring into their to their various collections. So, you know, if you out of ignorance go and buy something that obviously is not supposed, is in the red flag of ICOM and bring it to your institution, you are going to be sanctioned, and the sanctions most times are really very grave, very serious. So you know, a lot of countries started signing up to ICOM. A lot of African countries, I believe, in many South American countries also did the same. But you know, a lot of African countries started signing up to, you know, the UNESCO treaty, and then they are now being covered by that shield, so people cannot really, cannot easily pilfer and sell those, cultural materials. Nigeria, for instance, signed up to UNESCO in 1973, which means that not until 1973, when they were not covered by UNESCO by that treaty, some objects actually left Nigeria. Because between 1966 and 1970, Nigeria was engulfed in a civil war. It is in the history books, it's referred to as the Biafra War. So in that, everybody knows what happened in a war-torn situation. So a lot of these objects kind of left the country.
Yeah. So
and because there were a lot of, black market trade and even collectors coming to buy during that period, some of those stones left. And so it came into the collection of what's his name again? I can't say the very first guy's name, but I know it is top of my head. But it moved from his hand to Jeffrey Hammer's. Jeffrey Hammer was I believe was a collector, but also a representative of the museum, I think, in the LACMA area. Okay. And LACMA is in the California area. So this object was shown, and then it went back to the owner. Well, I'll remember it eventually. It went back to the owner.
So getting back to the Conchi that you saw in the Florida show and were interested in, how did that move forward? And you make sure that you were able to acquire it.
Right, that was exactly what I was still trying to draw the thread now. So when I saw that Akwanshi, I kind of liked it so well, and I did quite a few research that kind of led me to how the Akwanshi left Nigeria before Nigeria signed up to the UNESCO treaty. And I was also able to see how the object has moved around in the United States until where it found itself in the holding of an art collector, no, of an art dealer, and one of the presenters of Antique Roadshow. His name is John Buxton. He lives in Dallas. So we were kind of closing in to get that object when I was still in Virginia. I in the build up to that too, I went to Nigeria to present a paper on that Conchi Stone, just as a way to make sure that we are not treading on the wrong path and then kind of get whipped for that. So when I got there and presented the paper and showed them the object that I was interested to buy, there's so much they were really very enthusiastic to see the end of the business and how we are going to bring the stone into the collection and care for the object.
Can you tell us what an Conchi stone is and why it would be exciting to take it out of the art trade and have it in a museum, and also why it may have been something that was red flagged?
First and foremost, I think the importance of Akwanshi is that it falls within that idea of objects created for the veneration of ancestors among the Ijagan people of southeastern Nigeria. Initially, nobody understood why they would prefer to use stone, because a great deal of African cosmology have this belief in the impermanence of ancestral presence. So we have always grown to know that the use of wood and other ephemeral materials is because it fits in with that idea that ancestral presence is not supposed to be permanent. So when we use these objects, after a while they disintegrate and go back into the earth, and we create new ones when there is a need to request the presence of the ancestor. But when it got to the Ijagan people, we now surprisingly kind of found all these wonderfully carved stones, which from my understanding kind of connote this this idea of permanence, and that actually kind of became very interesting to me to really probe a little bit deeper to understand why the people had to choose an object that suggests that. So among the people, and when I say among the people, I am referring to the people where the stones were discovered first, and they are called the Ijagam people of the Cross River region of Nigeria. In the early 20th century, I believe in 1905, there were some British anthropological officers working around that region that identified the stone, but they didn't know what they were. So, they were more like, alluvial deposits somewhere. Mm-hmm. No interest was placed on them, and also because the way colonialism kind of played out in that part of Nigeria, where, the British used the indirect route system to occupy most of those places. So, and, when they kept forcing in their whole idea of Christianity, a lot of people, when they see things that really did not look very clean, they run away from it, and that eventually led to this abandonment until late in the half of the century, I think in the 50s and the 60s, where another British forestry officer now took his time to catalog those stones, and then began to ask from community to community what the stone represented to them. Mm. That was how we came to understand the meaning of the stone and the significance of the stone to the people. So the whole idea, because Nigeria signed up to UNESCO Treaty in 1973, those stones are also classified as those materials that were unearthed archaeologically. So which means that they are not supposed to be sold. It doesn't matter what, they cannot be sold. But for those that have already left the country before that treaty was signed, are already in circulation, and they are in the collections of individuals. So we know that how museum get some of their objects is that individual have private collections, and then at some point in their life they eventually decide to kind of bring that to institutions of museum and keep. So the danger is that when they begin to do that, and if objects that they have in their collection are also stolen, it becomes a problem for the museum to accept those. Yeah, but that is where the curator comes in. They have to do all the necessary research to make sure that object coming into the collection is clean enough not to attract any kind of attention, negative attention, and so forth. So those were what we took into consideration while researching that work. But Virginia eventually did not buy the stone.
So as you curated this show with this recently acquired Ekwenchi, how did you think about presenting the object in a way that was thoughtful and respectful, given all of the history and all of the sort of original purpose, but then all of these layers that have to do with provenance and war and the art market? Like, how did you really think about putting up the exhibition?
Right. I actually started out that exhibition thinking around the larger idea of inscribing ancestors in stone. That was one of the most important takeoff point for me. Then when it then come to presenting the material, and in agreement, and in line with my knowledge of how those materials were kept in various cultures where they come from. Initially, right from the get-go, I was against caging them up in the plexis. Those plexiglasses is like kind of suffocating the ancestors. Okay. And I made sure that my stone was not put in there. Every object in my museum that was part of that show were not put in plexiglasses. They were allowed to breathe. That was one. The only few objects that were kept in plexiglasses, it was a very great fight. I wanted them to be open, but they said because they came from individuals who were loaning for the show, that they have to obey their own rules and regulations. So that was one of the ways, and because of how I saw the care for object within the museum, which to a large extent was lacking in the region when I went to do the lecture that I did before acquiring the stone. I was able to get images to show how many of the stones in the community are being subjected to different kinds of destruction. They were bush burning and all these things happening there. To me, if that practice continues, it will get to the point where we may not be able to, find any of those things left. And institutions of museum, saddled with that responsibility of, collecting and caring, which is collecting and conserving those objects for generations to come. If we are able to, maybe keep one or two or three of this object and keep them very safely, there will be room for us to, there'll be rooms for generations to come to, enjoy this thing even more. But importantly, there are various clues on the object itself that I believe future research will help us unfold, because among the people there's a secret system that was called Nsibiri. This was a men's secret association that operated during colonialism. They used secret languages to send message across. If you know the Nigerian American artist who live in the Washington area, his name is Victor Ekpot. Okay. Victor Ekpot's work is a reflection of the Nsibiri secret society, where they use scripts, more like those Egyptian, like hieroglyphs. Yeah, that is, if we look at that stone, right in the abdominal area, there is a circle there. Mm-hmm. I have proposed that circle could sit with that idea of Nsibiri script, which is very secretive. But again, when I now understood the much more deeper meaning why they venerate ancestors in that region, which is for agricultural production, or for the hope of bountiful agricultural production, I began to look at that concentric circle as a calendrical system that they use in identifying the time of year when agricultural produce are being put in the ground and when it comes out. Oh. And also how they venerate that ancestor sometime is that those agricultural produce is made and is prepared, is cooked and fed to them. And then the palm wine that is taken from the sap of the palm tree is also poured on them as a sign to appreciate that they have gotten bountiful harvest for that year. So I brought all those information in to kind of help us see this object in a much more respectful way, and not just drop them there, put them in a glass and then write up just a little item about them. That wasn't my style. And I feel, putting more information and putting the voice of the people that created the work, to a large extent, we are actually giving that work the kind of respect they truly deserve. Yeah. And if you look at my labeling, rather than me call it stone monolith first before describing it as Ekwenchi, it was the other way around. I have to say the name and then interpret that in English. That way, you truly give this respect to the people.
I have written down dead men in stone. That's your...
Yeah, that is the translation of the Ekwenchi. But in the literature before now, they used to refer to them as stone monolith.
Which is
really
nothing.
That's it.
It could be an Easter Island sculpture, or it's non-specific. So I will let the audience know we have about 5 minutes left, 5 or 6. So if you have questions, please chat them either in the side or underneath. And I will start off with a question, which is, we're going through a period in our country of great loss, right? That when we think about COVID, it's really a lot of trauma, and a lot of people, specifically in African-American communities, are losing their elders in huge numbers, certainly in New York and Louisiana, where you are, and in other places. So sort of what lessons or what thoughts do you have thinking about ancestor worship in art in this particular time when we're losing so many of our elders.
Yeah, I should have been in this presentation with my sister and my friend, Sister Sula. She is a priestess of Mami Wata. She lives in the city. We have met a number of occasions because I also studied a water spirit among the Benin people of southwestern Nigeria. What I think what we will always say is that we are being given a sign, which means that we should return back and do the necessary veneration to probably clean our land. Because what the ancestors come back to do for us is to clean the land of any kind of danger. And how do we do that? Sister Sula and myself say that New Orleans have this expansive body of water. We can really start from very little. We can go around that thing, do the necessary rituals that we need to do, purify the water. And if in the course of purifying the water, we are actually expanding that purification to the land. That is a first way forward. There could be other ways, but I know that water is so powerful; it can purify things. At the end of the day, one of those ingredients that we are asked to use in this whole process is to always wash our hands, get our hands clean, get ourselves clean. So water is the starting point for us to kind of heal. But I know very well that the sign has come, and we have seen the sign. The next that follows the sign is now the healing process. It will eventually commence, and then we will kind of come back. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm on an interview, okay? Thank you.
Well, we have to feel for all the little kids who are trying to come into our meetings. Yep. So that's a really valuable, I think, point that washing and purification is so much of how we protect ourselves from this virus, and we're going to need more purification and healing to move forward. So my next question would be, what do you hope for the future? And that can be any way, but I think you touched on how we need to learn and how this is really a sign for us to do differently. What do you hope out of that?
When we do the needful, which is when we carry out the necessary sacrifice, we are always assured that our land will be clean again, which means that there is obviously a much more positive future for us. This is not going to be the end. It is just a small crack that when we get cleaned up, we'll kind of go into a whole new phase, and our life will keep going.
And what do you hope for the art world or for your museum going forward?
Oh, a lot. I have a lot of ideas. And you probably told me that you got to know me through Kimberly Gant. Kimberly Gant brought an idea of a contemporary art show, which we are hoping is going to come up in the fall of 2022.
Okay.
That show will actually show us a lot of contemporary art activities in immediate post-independent Africa, Nigeria specifically, where a lot of young artists were in the build-up to independence in the 1960s. They were so excited, and they created exciting body of work that showed their enthusiasm to liberate themselves from the shackles of colonialism. But also we saw artists who were coming from various parts of the world at that same time to feast with these young guys. So that promises to be a very exciting show where we'll see artists coming from South America, from Japan, from India, and even from Europe and Nigeria and many African countries. At a time in the history of Africa where there was this hope of liberation, time for independence, and they created very wonderful works, and they did a lot of other artistic events that that we hope to bring into that show. Yeah, so that is one part, and I also have a lot of other shows within the African side, because when I was being hired, they asked me what can I do differently, and I say we have seen a lot of museums where things are very quiet. I have proposed the whole idea of activating the museums. It doesn't have to be quiet. Where shrines are kept, where I come from, it's never a quiet place. It's never a quiet place. There's always this kind of noise going on around there. So we should try to recreate some things like that here going forward.
And in New Orleans, it's normally a party place. So
that's it. So yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, well, we're at half an hour, so I will let you go. It sounds like somebody is waiting for you.
Yeah, she's already here waiting for me.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And so for the audience, the internet, today is Tuesday the 5th. This is the last day this week I'll be on. But next week, which is Monday, Monday the 11th, we will be back with more Nigerian excellence. We have Bimbola Akimbola, who's now at Northwestern University, talking about diaspora movement, and she has also started her own sort of micro-philanthropic initiative around COVID. So tune in for that. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, YouTube, who didn't ask any questions because you can't. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Okay. Bye.